Good morning, everyone. I hope you're all having a wonderful morning so far. Thanks for tuning in, watching this video. Um, so let's get started. So on the Canvas page for today, so we have a warm-up. This warm-up, you're going to watch a video of it's about McCarthyism. It's on TED Ed. McCarthyism kind of came up on the lesson last time, which would have been on April 7th for you guys. But, it's coming up again, right? Repetition's good, helps you remember stuff. So watch the video on McCarthyism and then just add, your thoughts about it. What do you think it would be like to live through that? Or, what was it? What was it like? And I have some, if you're stuck and you're like, I really don't know what to say, Mrs. Ward, I have some guiding questions. You can pick one and just answer the question. That works great. I have it set up so that once you comment, you should be able to see other students' comments afterwards. But anyway, just worry about your own comment at first. And if you want to comment on someone else's after, that's cool too. That's what makes it a discussion, right? Talking to other people. So, look what your other classmates have to say, what they think, and you should be able to reply and comment back on their stuff as well. So today we're going to be looking at the arms race and a little bit of the space race, and then you will have an assignment dealing with it's actually a song. You're going to listen to a song and look at the lyrics and then answer some questions. In the additional resources today, so I've included a space race timeline, a video about the first steps on the moon, and a Vox video about Apollo 11 that I thought were interesting. They're not required, they're just additional, they're interesting. So let's take a look at the space race today. And the arms race. Starts with the arms race. So we have a couple essential questions. So number one, the Cold War was predicated upon what belief? What was mutually assured destruction? And what were the SALT treaties? So starting out the arms race, I know in one of my other slides we talked about this before, but I'm going over it again. So in a little bit different way. So if it didn't stick before, hopefully it sticks now. So arms race. During the Cold War, the United States and the Soviet Union became engaged in a nuclear arms race. Both of these countries spent billions and billions of dollars trying to build up huge stockpiles of nuclear weapons. And near the end of the Cold War, the Soviet Union was spending around 27% of its total GNP, their gross national product, on their military. This actually really hurt their economy, and is part of the reason why the Cold War will end. So Cold War starts with the arms race, and it'll also kind of end with the arms race. So why is this happening? Why is it all starting? So go us. So the United States was the first to develop nuclear weapons. We did this through the Manhattan Project during World War II. We ended up using the nuclear bombs on Japan by dropping those bombs on the cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in Japan. And that ended the war with Japan in that part of World War II. These bombs are extremely powerful weapons. They can destroy an entire city, kill tens of thousands of people, and the people who are exposed to them but aren't killed can have lasting effects, issues with genetics or cancer, stuff like that. This guy is J. Robert Oppenheimer. He is the father of the atomic bomb. He's the leader of the Manhattan Project. So above my picture is a picture of him, and then I don't know which direction it is. To the side of me, there's one of Einstein and him together. And And there's lots of stuff about him in like years after they dropped the bombs, of him like feeling really bad about it, kind of a thing. But yeah, he's kind of like the father of it. So, right, we're starting out with some bombs, but we were like the first ones to have them and like the only ones to have them for a long time. But then August 29th, 1949, the Soviet Union successfully tested its first atomic bomb. And everyone was like, whoa, we didn't think that the Soviet Union was that advanced, especially with their nuclear development. And so then all of a sudden, it's like, oh, well, we gotta have more bombs than them, and we gotta, have more efficient bombs than them, better bombs. 1952, the United States detonated their first hydrogen bomb. This was even more powerful, is a more powerful version of like the atomic bomb. The Soviets will follow a little bit later, and they'll explode their first hydrogen bomb in 1953. So only a year later, right? They're catching up. Both sides are going to continue lots of scientific development. They're going to develop new and more powerful weapons. And because they're creating all these new weapons, we have a lot of fear spreading throughout the world. Because it's like, oh, man, those guys have some really big bombs, and they have the technology to, shoot those at me and stuff like that. And so, a lot of militaries, not just the USSR and the United States, but a lot of militaries will begin to work on defenses like large radar arrays. So it's like you'd be able to see if a missile was coming or had been launched. And then especially the United States and the USSR will work on defense missiles that could shoot down ICBMs, which is like, ICBMs are missiles that can go like a really far distance. You can shoot someone on a different continent. So yeah, they'll start to make like defense missiles. And there's actually like some really cool stuff with that. I actually didn't put it in here because I don't know why I didn't, but if you're interested in that kind of stuff, there's lots of good information on like Reagan's Star Wars program. Yes, it's called Star Wars. But it was all about like shooting down like missiles that were headed towards the United States. And there's still like a lot of military installments like up in Alaska, like for that purpose. Fallout shelters. So, right, people are starting to get really scared that they're going to be bombed. At the same time, people will build bomb shelters and underground bunkers where they could hide in case of a nuclear attack. Deep underground facilities were built for high-ranking government officials where they could reside safely. And over time, you actually start to see like community fallout shelters. Where was I? Hold on. So there's one in Ogden. There's still like the signs for it. It's kind of by where they do like all the Christmas lights. Anyway, you can look it up or go for a drive and look around. I know it's on like the south side of the building that looks like it belongs in like a Batman Gotham City movie or something like that. It's on the south end of that building that has like the Christmas lights, It's on like that road. I don't even know if they still have the sign, but when I was in high school, I remember driving around and seeing it, and it's like Fallout Shelter, and it had like arrows and stuff. But yeah, so there's like community ones, where like people could go and like go underground, or people would like build their own. And yeah, I mean, there's just like lots of people who are really afraid. I remember talking to my dad, and he grew up in Cache Valley, just north of Logan, and when he was a kid, he would always get worried when the snowplows would go down the street because he thought that they were like bombers, and that the Russians were coming to bomb him. So I mean, really, it's just like I mean, it's not just government officials who are worried about it. It's like everyday people who are worried about stuff like this. There's this thing called mutually assured destruction, or MAD, MAD. This is one of the major factors in the Cold War. It meant that both countries could destroy the other country in the case of an attack. It wouldn't matter how successful the first strike was. The other side could still retaliate and destroy the country which first attacked. For this reason, neither side ever used nuclear weapons. Basically, it's saying that, say, the United States launches a missile at Russia. Before that missile hits Russia, right, blows up and explodes, Russia could shoot at the United States, right? And essentially, it's just like if you kill me, I'll kill you before you kill me kind of a thing. And so both countries are, I mean, it's just really on edge, really stressful during this time, because they both are kind of, it's like waiting, right? Waiting to press the button. And this doesn't even help. So Nikita Khrushchev, he's a leader in the USSR government. He went to a Polish embassy and was quoted saying, "We will bury you," in November of 1956. This was translated, right, from Russian, and like the translation was correct, but the context wasn't. He meant like economically bury you, like our economy is going to do so much better than the United States economy, and our people will be doing so much better. But a lot of people, right, only took that little part of the quote and thought that it was a nuclear threat. And so they, right, are really freaking out because they thought that it was, a threat and they were going to get bombed and stuff. But Nikita Khrushchev was just talking about, like, our economy is we're going to bury you economically. Our economy is going to be super great. There's those essential questions again. Pause it if you need it. Détente and arms reduction. So the arms race keeps heating up, building more and more weapons, more and more advanced. It becomes really expensive for both countries, the United States and the USSR. So in the early 1970s, both sides realized that something had to give. Otherwise, they would ruin both of their economies by building like so many weapons. The two sides will begin to talk and take a softer line towards each other. This easing of relations was called détente. So it's kind of the relaxing. It's like, okay, we don't have to be so on edge. And in order to try and slow down the arms race, the countries agreed to reduce the amount of weapons that they had through SALT I and SALT II agreements. SALT stood for Strategic Arms Limitation Talks. So really they're meeting together and making agreements to not build as many or to get rid of the ones that they have. All right, so the space race. Okay, so I have two more essential questions. That's it for today, as far as essential questions go. So what happened on October 4th, 1957, and why was this event important? And what was Vostok, and why was it important? So we've talked about Sputnik before. Here it is again. It's the first man-made satellite sent into space. It was launched on October 4th, 1957. It orbited for 22 days before, coming back to Earth. It was the size of a beach ball, and it really surprised Americans how, advanced Russia was at the time, scientifically. This wasn't the first thing that humans had launched into space. That goes to the Germans during World War II. They created missiles that could be launched right up into space and then go to different continents. And yeah, the scary thing about Sputnik wasn't that, they sent a satellite into space. It was that the technology used to launch Sputnik into space could be used to launch nuclear missiles at any U.S. city by launching into space and then going down. So, Americans weren't scared of the satellite itself. They were scared of the technology behind the satellite. Russia continued, right, their quests for space. We saw Laika, who was a stray dog from Moscow that the Soviets launched into space. I just thought it was interesting, so I put that in here. There's a stamp, there's a picture. But yeah, it was just like some stray dog, just some dog they found wandering around, and now it's super famous. Vostok is the first manned spacecraft launched by the Soviet Union. This happened in 1961. And Yuri will be the first human in space. This is a picture of what it would have looked like. So this says, the first manned spacecraft was launched by the Soviet Union in 1961 called Vostok 1. It carried the first human into space. Soviet Air Force pilot Yuri Gagarin, later Vostok, carried the first woman in space, and other cosmonauts, which are Soviet astronauts. The design was a metal sphere where the cosmonauts stayed for the entire journey. The sphere was connected to a container shaped like a cone where equipment for the mission was kept. The decent capsule with the cosmonaut inside separated from the rest of the craft to go back to Earth. During the spacecraft's descent, the cosmonaut ejected the craft and parachuted back to Earth. Vostok means east in Russian. And I'm probably saying it wrong. Okay, then we have the Mercury missions. So the Mercury 7 were the first United States astronauts. There's a picture of them probably above me. John Glenn he's one of them. He's actually, if you look on the bottom row, he's the second person from the, what is that, right? Anyway, John Glenn becomes the first American to orbit the Earth, and he does that in February 1962. He's actually a really cool dude. He was a fighter pilot in World War II and the Korean War. And then he'll actually, when he's done being an astronaut, he'll become a senator, and then he actually goes back into space during the space shuttle missions, and he's like, I don't know if he's still the oldest person who's gone to space, but he's definitely one of the oldest. He was in his 70s. Right after, not right after, so this was in February 1962, so September 1962, John F. Kennedy, who's the president at the time, gives a speech declaring the United States' intent. So he says, "We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and to do other things, not just because they are easy, not because they are easy, but because they are hard, because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills, because that challenge is one that we are willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one which we intend to win, and others too." So this is really an important speech because it kind of sets the tone for the rest of the space race. I mean, it's like, we're going to the moon. We're going faster than Russia. It's going to be really, really hard to do that, but we're going to do that. And this is actually really important as well, because this starts jumpstarting funding and things like NASA will get a lot more funding, education as a whole will get a lot more funding, kids will end up actually having to do more homework, and all sorts of stuff, because the United States wanted to become like more advanced, faster. July 16th, 1969, this is when, it's right before the decade ends, the Apollo 2nd mission put Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin on the moon, and that's where Neil Armstrong says his famous "one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind." I have a video of this in the additional resources back on that Canvas page, if you want to watch it. It's not the greatest quality because, it was 1969 and in space. So, this is the end of the space race. So it's the Apollo-Soyuz mission. So 1975, the United States and the USSR had their spacecrafts dock into each other in space, and their crews exchanged gifts. You know, it was just kind of like a truce. It's like, okay, yeah, we're done. We got to the moon first. Woo! Kind of a thing. Let's make sure you get those essential questions written down. And then this is kind of like a tie to more modern stuff. So on the one side, we have the December 6th, 1968 Time magazine. And then a more modern, it's from July 29th, 2019. So the one from 1968, we have a spacesuit with the American flag, and then we have a red star in the other one. So that's for the USSR, the Soviet Union, racing for the moon. And then there's one, Lucy. The next space race, right? And we have like SpaceX and China and stuff. All right, so make sure that you do this assignment. It's 8 questions long, so it shouldn't take you too long. You're going to look at a song by Sting titled Russians. This is a lyric video, and then this is a YouTube link for the music video. The music video is interesting. I prefer the lyric videos, that's why I put them on there. And then here's the lyrics, so make sure you read through those. Watch the video, read the lyrics, and then answer the questions afterwards. On the questions, I have my voice reading them, so if reading off of the computer screen drives you crazy, you can listen to me read them. And yeah, that should be it. So I hope you guys have a great day, and we'll see you soon.